Well, if y'all are ready, I reckon we best begin. We have this prompt, and we can still add to it. You know, we have these questions to answer, right? What's the culture? What's the history? What led to this state that we now find our frontier town in being? Oh. There we go. Cheers. That's the stuff. Is the glacier freshwater? Yes. The glacier's freshwater, although it will have a lot of debris inside of it, as it is scraping along. It's growing. It's growing further to the south, which is it's a threat, you know, of some kind. Is it going to be a threat in the next 5 years, 10 years? Probably not. The next 50 years, it's probably going to continue creeping down. Yes. But it's scraping along as the glacier continues to grow. So there is going to be a lot of debris, but a lot of the meltwater, I mean, it'll be fresh. It's just mineral water. There you go. It's you're getting that upgrade for free. Yeah, sandstone is a natural filter. All right, so here's our inspiration. We have this area here. I mean, we could put it here if we want to put it between two mountains. So here, how about this? Where would you all want to place this frontier town? Would you want to put it? And also, we can draw another river if we really want to. This was just me explaining how the meltwater would kind of flow out to the sea. You know, what you're seeing here, this is first draft idea stuff. So if we want, you know, a river or something that flows further into the swamp over here, that's fine, because we're going to need a source of fresh water for this frontier town. Where would you want to place it? Would you want to put this sort of frontier area between these mountains, so already a little bit past the swamp? Or would you want to put it even prior to the swamp, so that, you know, if denizens or animals came up from the swamp, they would encounter the fort/monastery/town of, you know, modern society over here? Would you want to, you know, somehow say that maybe we develop a trail that actually kind of skirts along the lake, and the frontier town is between these two rivers, and is actually kind of in the middle, and it's caught between this gigantism canyon and the swamp and the forest people, because they pretty much stick to themselves and just travel this way in this kind of not accursed, but, you know, in this cycle of following the star and finding each other and warring and living and whatever. So we could even have a frontier town up here in the grasslands, probably not by the glacier, unless, and this could be interesting, they build the frontier town onto the face of the glacier, because maybe the crystal keeps it cold, so melting isn't necessarily an issue, and so they're using the glacier as kind of a disguise, or they're building into the ice to stay cool or whatever. We could do that too. Look, this is high fantasy. I don't want us to think, oh, we're constrained. You know, oh, we have Dragonborn and half-elves. Well, we know what those are, do we? These are our Dragonborn. These are our half-elves. This is our glacier. This is already kind of a weird ecosystem, a fun, you know, like magical, kind of mysterious. There's this unknown of death in the glacier. There's this unknown of a celestial body that's you know, implanted itself into the earth and is causing these changes. We could think outside the box. I mean, we could be routine if we want. Ooh, pardon me. Also, good evening to you, Misfit. So what I'm kind of looking at here is, you know, if they have a trail, I'm thinking it could either go on the glacier, in the grasslands here, at this pivot point between the two mountains, or at this point between the lake and the mountain. Inversion time, the frontier is the border of the glacier. Ah, very good. So Tesla, and I have no problem with you all swapping stuff up. There's nothing saying that this couldn't be a north-south expansion. That's true. In fact, if we kind of whip up, paint here, we can say that whatever. It's not like I'm not wasting ink. Hang on. And so somewhere here, somewhere kind of in the center, radiating out, is this old city. And then, of course, remember, we have all the cracks of this supernatural wind, this kind of like spiritual wind that's carving a bunch of tunnels and stuff. Woo, through the glacier, connecting each other and whoopity-doo. Kind of radiating out. And eventually all roads are going to lead to Rome at some point in time. But that's true. The society that has sent these people down, maybe the glacier just sort of has this cloud cover or this mist over the top of it because of the constant variation of the temperature. And so, flying over it, but even by magical means, won't necessarily render too much. And the wild magic inside can interfere with arcane eyes and scrying and clairvoyance and the like. So that's true. We might have, civilized lands. Civil society. Not that the natives aren't civil. They just have they live in a different way. So civil society could be on this side of the glacier. This glacier, right? It's filled with the souls of the, like, it draws in dead, as we're describing. Now, could we make it different? We could, but I think we're rolling with this. Whoop. Hi, cat. So we have this civil society. This is really big, but this could just be something that, boop, it's like a little city right up here, and they have been trying to discover what lies across this glacier, because maybe we're talking like, because glaciers are huge. If you do some Ice Age research, right, look at how the Great Lakes were carved, and you want to tell me that none of you are, I don't think, but you want to tell me that glaciers are just like, they're just big ice cubes. Like, we're talking, state and country sized pieces of ice just scraping across the ground. And so here we have an ever expanding glacier that's even these people in this civil society probably even know that at some point in time this could be a great city, this could be a city state or something, but this glacier is coming for them, right? Maybe they project in 100 years the glacier's going to reach them and wipe out the city. And so 100 years is a long time, but they gotta find out what's going on. And so they send out people to try and go through, and that probably ends in bad times. They pizza instead of French fry. They try and send people over it, but maybe the mists have something, or the anti-magic, or not anti, but wild magic gets them, or the creatures that live inside, the remoras or the undead, or even just the fact that you have magic-eating plants inside this glacier as well. So there is anti-magic. And so at some point in time, a group either made its way through the glacier and popped out at the other end. And what a hell of an adventure that they would have had. Or they did manage to go around the glacier through all the wilds and the woods and everything. And in one way or another, I mean, I guess they would have been coming from this direction. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. And so then they end up here, where we have the glacier lake and this wedge of mountain. And this could be 1,000 miles. For most of the population, that's huge. I mean, we're talking Oregon Trail stuff. And a lot of people, just because it exists, I mean, some people will climb a mountain because it exists. But maybe that's why this could be a research outpost, or why this is run in a, as a republic where there is a good amount of people. Perhaps there are even religious people. This could have been a pilgrimage, right? We have a monastery of sorts, this library, this religion, people who then have picked up on the trends, on the fact that there's this fallen star and all of this is happening. Oh, Sheeps, I've got to head to bed now. I'm super tired. Thanks for the stream, Maddie. It's always fun. Have a great night. Sheeps, sleep well. And do you count yourself jumping over a fence? How does that work? Let me catch up in chat. I was on a bit of a roll there. Which, honestly, y'all might have even better ideas, and I just... I wasted my breath. I'd say Western Lake Mountain, out of the way, but avoids a natural barrier and monster's den that dissuades direct movement. But I also like my wilderness trekking, says Old Port Media. Del Corin, good morning to you. Digital Ink Lives Matter, yes, Misfit. Strodsville, oh, oof, Alan. Old Port says, so basing it off the lake and the stone, one of the few civilizations that had both of those were Phoenicia. Clay-backed sandstone, bowls used for stews, soups, baked fish dishes from the lake. Type of water would also work for fermentation for like kimchi or garum. I haven't heard of garum. Depending on the societal diet, considering plague. And by the way, this could also be the rise of beer. Right? What if there's a dysentery outbreak, right? What if a bunch of undead kind of sluiced into the lake during a melt or a crumble? And now we have a bunch of dead bodies, that are over here, but the water flows and is affecting the society here. And suddenly everyone's getting, somebody poisoned the water hole. And there's undead that either are plaguing themselves because, you got skeletons crawling up out of the lake or whatever, or the old material has thawed out and is beginning to decompose in the lake. And the lake's ecosystem isn't set up for sort of like mass biomaterial decomposing at the same time. And so it does cause a disease, a plague like dysentery. And so in that case, brewing is going to be extra important because that's going to kill the germs in the water. You count your husbands, Sheeps. Gotcha. That's right. You do have many a husbando on your list. Is there a legend or key? Gallows? No. In this conceptual, this is all sort of first draft stream of thought stuff. For all we know, this could be 20 miles. This could be 2 miles. This could be 500 miles that, we will, in a dedicated trek, go over. The scale is really going to be up to us. But I want to spark our imaginations first, and we'll worry about the minutia, the details later. I want that wouldn't it be cool if, or that that legend has it kind of a thing. In a world, right? Let's think in a world where this sort of craziness exists, and we're going to present, as dungeon masters, as decision makers, we're going to present this to players and say, here's your sandbox. Have fun. Welcome to the frontier. What do you want to do? Garum is a medicinal condiment used by both Phoenicia and Rome. It's still around today. Really wonderful. I haven't heard of it. Do we know it as something else? Or is it still called that? Odd Thought could do a Louisiana Delta style river system heading to the swamps. Yeah. I tried to simulate that up here, Old Port, because I had the river kind of fanning out, and so really we'd have to go through and add a bunch of little islands and other things. But I did, instead of just having this be a river going down, kind of pooling and rippling down, I did try and present that there would be deltas spreading out into the swamp. And we could put one of those here. We could put one of these just sort of, we could go off the map, because there's more to the world than that. And brewing would definitely add a special something cuisine-wise. I do like the idea of a delta. The crashing star could easily have created. Oh yeah, yeah. So you know, we could have some deltas coming down into this. So we have the swamp proper, and then we have our deltas here. From Google, garum was a fermented fish sauce used as a condiment in the cuisines of ancient Greece, Rome, and later Byzantium. Ooh, cool. Colatura dialysi and Worcestershire sauce are descendants of the sauce itself, but don't come near its flavor profile. Yeah, that old dang old Worcestershire English sauce. You put on dang old fish and chips, dang old potatoes, and dang old Worcestershire. Dang old. Well, because, and you know what? You all bring up an interesting point. Sauces like that, fish sauces, whether they're European or Asian, have a flavor a profile that is different than what we consider to be the standard flavors, right? We're often taught sour, sweet, salty, bitter, and savory. Am I getting my tongue portions correct? But there's this other, you know, there's the sixth sense of taste. And you know what that's called? Hey, Fowlin, you got it. Umami. Umami. These people could have discovered or employed a new type of taste that over here, whatever society or societies, you know, live out here, that's fine and good, but this is the birthplace of umami. Very heavy with a fermentation of soy or fish. Mushrooms are a very umami flavor as well. And so this is also, pardon me, this is adding to the culture and to the ecosystem, right? Think about this. And as a dungeon master, I want you to consider this. If you are starting an adventure in an inn, very classic, you know, bread and butter stuff, and we'll get to bread and butter. Maybe they're serving bread and butter to the heroes. Level 1 heroes. You're at the local pub, you know, where all great adventurers start. By telling your players, and they may not think of this, but by telling your players they're in a pub, they're eating chunks of cheese and meat, bread and butter, you are representing an entire ecology and economy. There must have been enough wood nearby that is sturdy to make the heavy beams of the inn. Or clay for the walls. I don't know if you want it like Tudor style or whatever, you know, however you want to do it. Or there's a quarry or very good stone to build the walls. There's sources of bees or plants, like so some sort of animal, whether it's insect or whales or whatever, that they can make wax or lantern oil to keep the establishment lit at night. The society is advanced enough to make glass as drinking containers or as windows, even if they're rare and expensive. We have the ability to blow and color or make glass, to make utensils. We also then have mines to dig up the sands or the steel and iron and lead, you know, the lead for a stained glass window per se, or to say. And then look at the meal itself. To make a simple loaf of bread, what has to be close by in this region? Certain farms growing certain grains with other certain ingredients. If they're buttering their bread, because the adventurers should always know who butters their bread, that also means that we don't just have farmland, we have dairy You know, so we have ranchers and not just farms. Whether it's a dairy farm or they slaughter, you know, the meat that they're eating is beef, or you know, hunks of pork, and it's all grown up on a ranch or another like a meat producing farm. But you also have a dairy farm, and you have to have the technology and the know-how to make the butter as well. You know, we've been spending most of our lives living in an Amish paradise. We churn butter once or twice, living in an Amish paradise. Minute after minute, hour after hour, raised a barn on Sunday, soon I'll raise another. You know, the cutlery to prepare this, the stoves or the great ovens or whatever. So by simply saying that a tavern exists, there is so much other stuff that must exist. Are there potatoes with the meat? Are there mushrooms with the meat? Are there carrots and other root stock? What is the role of the people in the tavern? Is it run by women or men? A mix of both? Are women the bartenders and men the servers? What is that speaking about the society or the values? If it's more broad than just, you know, thematic, because, I mean, you could start an adventure in a Hooters if you really want. I hear they have good wings. I don't know about anything else, but I've heard very good things about their wings. Or in Cleveland, there's a place called the Tilted Kilt, and it is a all or predominantly female staff, and their kilts are somewhat ill-fitting. And so, you know, what does that say about the humor, the cheekiness, the roles in a society? And so if this place has invented umami, and we have these umami flavors, maybe in this lake there's no great fish per se. Maybe it's a bunch of little sardines and minnows. I mean, maybe something the size of a, you know, maybe like a panfish, like a carp or something, or, you know, up here on Lake Erie we have perch. I mean, walleye are considered the big sport fish. I don't know if there's like anything like pike or walleye or whatever. I think walleye are actually a form of pike. Anyway, you know, so you might have some perch and minnows. Maybe there's a freshwater crab or shrimp that we want to invent. Those exist, but, you know, we have it here. And so what sort of a society produces this? And now how does that divorce us from the origins? Not only do these people perhaps have a different faith, and they have now looked different because of all this time. You know, the expedition was sent out, you know, whatever. If it's our 5 minutes to midnight is 100 years, right? Before the glacier crushes. I'll put a bigger X on the civil society. Or if we want it longer term, I don't know how quickly a societal, you know, effects would change, or what we'd want to do. If we want to say 200 years or something, it's arbitrary. You can explain it. I trust you. You're a DM. And now we find ourselves that the glacier's in the current state, but maybe it's the more southern here. It melts off more, which is why we have this big Great Lake down here. But up here in civil society, and it's been, you know, it's been 75 years. So there's not a lot of time left, or if we really want to turn up the pressure, it's been 90 years. It's been 98 years. It's been 1 week. No. And so what has happened to divide here? Has civil society ever come back down? What if the calculations were wrong and the glacier already crushed this society and drove people off? And if that's the case, why did none of them come back around the glacier? Did the glacier grow? Was there conflict? Was this just mass death, which then also fed the glacier, ironically enough? What if these survivors are the only ones that carried a form of heritage? What if it's a cultural taboo that this civil society doesn't go past a certain point on the glacier? Oh, we've never heard back from the frontier people. They must be dead. Oh, there must be terrible things. We've seen what happens when we send people through the glacier. let alone going around it and all the monsters and or whatever, you know, the avalanches that can occur. Hey, Pouty Lips, welcome. Yeah. I mean, it is getting close to summer, so, what if they somehow carved out a hollow in the glacier? Yeah, Lazy Monkey, we're talking about that. So our frontier town could very well be carved on the face of the glacier. I don't have a problem with that. Architecture or building materials. So when we look here, we're talking that this is probably more of a sandstone, but as we get closer to the sea, we're getting more of a dedicated, like a limestone, from all the crushed shells and the geological events that have occurred over the years so close to a large body of water. And then we have some igneous rock that's slowly tumbling and being pushed to the extremities of the glacier. So we have these three different rocks or substrates, or we could probably call it. You know, this rock here could be interesting in some way. You know, where this comet or this meteor sort of like tumbled and created this gouge in the earth. You know, it could be like a beautiful painted desert where you're seeing the strata. We can have this be whatever we want, right? This is just the concept. For all we know, what if they send people out to harvest these mushrooms? Because if these mushrooms, this mushroom mangrove forest that is desalinating the sea and causing fresh water to show up along the shore here, what if these are hardy enough that you could cut these down like trees? And if the frontier doesn't use it, then we could probably see this in seaside villages. We could see maybe that some of the forest people, or especially the swamp people, because I bet there's a bunch of mushrooms and whatnot that kind of like come and go. So they probably live in hollowed out, kind of dried out mushroom stalks. I don't see why not. Coffee Cat Raid! Woo woo! Thank you very much. And there's some Coffee Cat hype. So anyway, we're talking what ifs. We're spawning ideas, but you know what? Not that we can't change it later. One of the best things that we can do is let's just draw. Let's just get into it. And if we want to change stuff around, then we have the tools to be able to do so. All right, if we're going to place this, then between what I think the popular sentiment was between the lake and this in this part of like the shattered mountain here, this sandstone. And of course we can put a river or a delta, kind of this like, you know, coming down from the lake into the swamp proper here. I don't mind doing that because we're gonna need a source of fresh water anyway. So let's do this. Let's do this thing. To make this, we're gonna have, so all throughout the top is whatever. I don't have like a handful of rice that I can just sort of like put down on a map and do it that way. But we can create some interesting things. Just kind of whoop, does a little dippy do here. So here is the shore of our glacial lake. This is probably more heavily indicated than I had hoped, but whatever. We're zooming in. This scale could be whatever. And then right here we have this is more of a shattered mountain. So we have kind of the softer gouges and rolls and everything. There we go. So this is a little bit more detailed. Again, this could be 100 miles. This could be 20 miles. This could be 2 miles. We're not really working to scale. I just want to work with the concept. And we could even, you know, if we have to blow it up and kind of distort it and say, well, so here's the village on a 50 scale mile, but let's kind of draw it out or make a road, or we could set it over here and kind of have this be, you know, this could be a little boulder that's not presented. I mean, a little boulder, but, you know, like a big chunk of mountain. And so the swamp could even kind of bleed up a little bit through here. And this is the grassland that continues on. We could have a lot of fun with this. And why not, right? This is our story. This is our area. This is going to actually be smoother. All right? Water seeks its own level. And so unless the terrain is forcing it to be jagged, it won't be. Oh yeah, you were working on that, and yeah, Coffee. I saw you're working on the Seltzer emote too. I'll make sure to test that when the stream is over. By the way, you all have some really fun drawings, and I'm very appreciative that you're willing to share this sort of stuff. Ooh, look how crisp that is. That is really sharp. Coffee, my boy. You do good work. Yep, I'll test out the emote in Discord a little bit later tonight. I mean, as for sand, I mean, we could say that there is, right? There's a... The glacier has all kinds of debris, sand and gravel and everything, that's kind of riding at the forefront. Like, it might be difficult to tell, but there is a, like a light gray outline to the front of the glacier. And I want that to help offset the blue to the green artistically, but this can also represent the fact that you do have, I mean, not just gravel. I mean, you have like foothill-sized mounds of sand and gravel and ground up dirt and stones and boulders rushing through as this thing continues to push and grind along. So there could very well be sand to be used. Not enough cave villages. I mean, there's caves everywhere we could have. Gonna head to bed, though? Oh, shoot. 3 hours of sleep. Yeah, Coffee, get out of here. Go sleep. And thank you for the raid very much, and I'll see you around. So we have this. We're talking about a delta of some kind, which we can represent then rather easily. So we have our lake, and this could be entirely just delta, which isn't necessarily swamp. Or if we want, we can have, ooh, pardon me. Coming down here, we can have a river. It's following the land, and eventually it is going to just sort of open into. This is going to curve around, and we can create oxbow lakes and other stuff like that if you really want to. And from here, we can even have this. And this is just like a river going into it. We can have little creeks or cricks if you prefer. This one joins the delta right about here. But it's not as wide. So that's implying that we have a raised area in the middle. And we can put little land pieces here and also in this swamp as this delta is kind of coming to fruition. We can also do things like we can make a little island out here if we really want. Right up here by Lake Erie, we have a lot of they're called the shores and islands. If we're worried about things like sand, we can also go through and at some points, maybe where there was a big gravelly push, we can actually have sort of a beach area that's more sandy and it doesn't just have grass and trees going right up to it. So we can kind of have something like that. And then maybe it's really sandy. It picks back up right around here. Follows down a little bit because of the seasonal silt and everything that happens. Right? This kind of comes around like so. We'll have a bit of a sandbar jutting out. And this can come up. Whoopsies. Whoops, all sand. We didn't order that. And if we want, we can also indicate, there's still some, maybe by the mountains there's a lot of trees kind of tucked away. Maybe this area is very heavily forested. And so we just sort of, boop, 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 boop. A lot of water here. Maybe the forest just really grows along the delta, accenting to the swamp and such. Kind of hugs the mountains this way. And if we want to put our society over here, maybe a lot of the trees have been stripped away. Open grassland and such. Maybe we do have some woods that are, kind of bordering here until it gets up and the trees are just kind of jutting out into the lake. And then they become just really close to the lake. For whatever reason. I'm making stuff up as I go along. This is whatever we want it to be. This might be a place where wild rice grows. Okay, we can incorporate rice. I mean, we're talking rice and umami. We can look at, Oriental cultures, Korean, Chinese, Japanese. We can go to Vietnam. I mean, rice is a very universal grain. But if in particular we're talking umami, it might narrow it down and give us some cultural clues. Glaciers look like they're... Yeah, D&Ms, what would you know about glaciers? Oops, sorry. So I got so caught up in chat here. Lazy Monkey says, I also had a picture in my head of something similar to Pueblo-style cliff dwellings of a sort carved into the moving face of the glacier, but that's a little out there. Lazy Monkey? This is Dungeons and Dragons. We can do a cliff face village if we want to. I mean, for all we know, what if this crystal shard keeps the ice? It's like a permanent ice effect. And so you can carve into it, and you're not worried about your house collapsing because it does actually keep the ice together. Who knows? I threw that out there because it's a possibility. Why not? Right? We're using our imaginations. Let's have fun with it. So I know I've been narrating and drawing a non-Pueblo, faced village. A city carved into the cliff facing the glacier and the crystal. Something on the glacier's face itself would be a good location for a temple or a cult complex. Yeah, and so we could even indicate it as such. In fact, maybe that's where the monastery is. You know, just because we have a settlement doesn't mean everything has to be contained in the walls. It simply means that in this area, these things exist and are generally accessible to each other. But you know what? If it takes 3 days to get to the monastery, especially if you have to cross the lake for part of that, it could be more clandestine, right? You could have... So imagine this, right? You know, cover your eyes. Here's story time. This is an exercise I did with Fox in the Box. You're on a boat traveling through sparkling, pure glacial waters in this lake. You know, on a very bright day at noontime when the water is just piercing down, you swear you can see close to the bottom of this deep, pure well. And the fish, you can see the fish and the seaweed and all the, you know, a lot of these things. And in the distance, where the heat of the day is mixing with the cool of the glacier, there's this mist that just sort of pours off the face of the glacier. And as you draw close, not only are you hearing the lap, lap, lap of the water and the waves against the hull of your boat as you're making your way out here to the monastery, you also hear the distant sound of water rushing. And the waves get a little choppier, and that's because the monastery is located around where there are several tunnels or chutes of water, of glacial melt, that create magnificent waterfalls, just pouring out of the side of the glacier, as you have hundreds of square miles of a little bit of melt at a time trickling through and accumulating. And here, through the glacier, they dump into the lake. The monastery isn't in trouble, however, because the monastery is perhaps in possession of this crystal. And so it gleams. It's made of polished ice. It's carved. It has stone, right? It has stone and soil and elements of what the glacier provides. Very natural, you know, built into it. So as you approach, the waves are getting choppier. The waterfalls are kicking up even more mist than what just tumbles down the side in fog clouds. And there is this grand monastery that awaits you as you pull up to the docks made of stone and wood and other things that have floated around or been produced by the glacier, because everything here has been produced by the glacier, and it's here for you. Welcome to the monastery. Does that work? Was I able to invoke something interesting? It took a couple days to get there, but a monastery's remote, right? And if the monastery wants to be the brewer, like we think of a lot of Belgian monasteries and such, what means that they can't float the barrels across the lake like the lakemen in The Hobbit, right? With the elves and such. Or there's not a shipping. I mean, I say an industry, not like they have big style ships. But what if they use the glacial meltwater in some sort of a wine or spirit or beer making process? Hard to say, given the slow moving over time, and would it be cold, although possible warmer than one would think. Also bad to fall into a river that's being fed by a glacier. The silt will weigh you down and make it difficult to get out. That is a good piece of survival to know about, DMs, if we're going to be living in glacier land here. Thank you for sharing that. So there's a tension story here that could be applicable as a natural disposal method. Oh, tension because of tension or rivalry, either between the half-elves and Dragonborn, or it's a three-way standoff between these two and the Cabal. Or these two have come together, and there's the Cabal that's creating the tension. There's a lot we can do with this. I continue the thought a bit later, and yeah, I throw the ideas out to add to the jambalaya. Oh, yes. The jambalaya of ideas. Jambalaya sounds really good right now. Doomsday Glacial Cult is always... Yeah, well, because it's inevitable, right? The glacier continues to expand, and as we've been exploring, when people die, they go into the glacier, and that seems to be fueling the growth. Hey, Shukan, welcome. Probably for tomorrow, not today, but a tribe of humanoid pufferfish. Is that something that you're working on? You need feedback on, or what's your thought here, Shukan? A puffer Sahagin. Yeah, you could take a Sahagin and adapt it pretty well. Hey, New Monica, welcome. Maybe the Cabal is based... Oh, is the Glacier Monastery. So they made a power move. In fact, if there's a famine, like a plague going on, because we did talk about, is it dysentery? Is this undead glacier sort of dumping bodies into the lake? And it's causing disease. And so now the people need to rely on the brews and the filtration methods that the monastery has from this pure water coming through the glacier. And so the monastery, who are these very deeply, people with deeply held religious beliefs, fanatics or zealots, or, it doesn't always have to be that way, but they could come in and very civilly say, we'll do this, but we need some concessions. This is a republic, but we've mainly stayed outside of, whatever, conscientious objectors, or they just chose to leave the civilization of this frontier town to go to the glacier. And they say, if you want us to share our things, we will, but we're going to need concessions, and we are going to make decisions in order to help get through this. That could very well, because it says, a Cabal seized power openly. That could be violent. It could also just be the nature of the times. Hopefully not a deal with the devil. This could be a very benevolent faith even, but the faith is going to stand up and be stern and say, if you want our help, you have to do things the way that we know they work. Because we've been doing it this way for a very long time now, and it has worked. Yeah, it's an intrigue piece. White Dragonborn, it could be a part of this as well. Ice from a glacier stays cold longer than you make or buy, says Diadems. Thursday stream said building swamp society, so why not pufferfish? We can consider something like that, Shukan, yeah. Because we're going to take we're going to take the whispers that live in the swamp, but it doesn't mean that we also can't incorporate other creatures. We can't be more specific about the ecosystem there either. Because we're getting into that even here for our frontier. A monastery of white dragonborn appeals to you. Oh, so are we saying that the minority race of dragonborn perhaps are the more faithful ones, and they have either adapted, mutated, or that's just how they are, and they live in the monastery up here, where the tunnels, so they're kind of guarding this Underdark. Maybe they think that they're the ones who are this gate, the gateway to the dead, right? Because the dead as spirits or whatever are in the hallways. These strange wild magic effects take place. And so they could see themselves, maybe not as like a death cult, but they see themselves as defenders or as gatekeepers, as people who welcome the dead or who study it. And also, so this would be a very Ouija's style, right? Death and magic are the portfolios here. That could very well be. Maybe they send monks deep into the glacier to work and harvest ice or materials, plants or animals, and maybe they're also looking for something. They're looking for, is this an icy tomb? Are there mummies? Or because they obviously find preserved bodies, but lately there's been a lot of bodies being pushed out, and ultimately we know as DMs there's this great big old city in the middle of the glacier that's radiating out, and that is being fed by these by the people who die in the region. Fallon, you like this idea more and more. A swamp is a thriving environment. It's about life and decay mixed. Yes. The guardians of the frozen netherworld. So in that case, if we have to go and revise our map, there would technically be... we could sit and draw. I could just draw a glacier face and put a temple, the waterfalls coming out. They carve the ice to look like maybe a big dragon head or something like that in honor of their, in honor of the of that, and also not just white dragonborn, blue dragonborn can work, silver and bronze could also work because we're talking water and ice. It doesn't just have to be that. I mean, if we want to just say it's white dragonborn, 100% I'm fine with that. If you want to have it mixed or have it be mixed chromatic and no metallics, that's fine. You want to have it be whatever, like co-ed for dragonborn kind of a thing, and have it be a mix of metallics and chromatics, that's fine too. Or just say it's silver and white dragonborn only, or it is just white dragonborn only. Darkly benevolent, I can see some sort of use of necromancy and things from the Underdark / Glacier. Yes. So it would almost be a religion. We're talking things like wild magic sorcerers who are very pious, or dragonborn sorcerers who are pious. And the dragonblood sorcerers who are pious. Who their sorcery probably manifests more with necromancy powers. As a DM, if there are necromancy spells that wizards get and sorcerers don't, you may want to consider in this environment providing that. Or you could go clerics. I mean, clerics can be necromancers as well. If you go outside of the player's handbook, there is also a monk subclass that deals with death and dying. Otherwise, they could be raised to be like Way of Shadow monks, or the elemental monks even. So you can have this very interesting, thriving mini society carved into the glacier that are spelunkers, that are pious people, that are ones who, they're not afraid to show that they have power, and they have traded with the city. The city needs them, they need the city. But here in these circumstances, they have moved in and they have asserted dominance in the crisis that there's been this disease outbreak, or an outbreak of the undead, and they're the experts at that. And whether or not they're impugned as red herrings or the ones responsible, you can have a ton of intrigue with just that setting alone. Ooh, pardon. For anything to be carved in the face of a glacier, would have to be kept frozen by magic, as a glacier carving would be difficult. Yes. So I think that's why we're talking about supernatural martial powers or magic powers. White dragonborn are what springs to my mind, maybe mixed with silver. But when I think of frozen wastes, white dragons are what comes to mind, and they have that purity in the white. But that's just the view of this lazy monkey, yes. At least the ones that run things there, the core of the monastery, likely mixed with others at the lower level. Oh, okay. Hey, Victor, welcome. It's about to get Game of Thronesy in the Dwarf campaign. The Mad Necromantic Queen Obak leads an army of dead against Sandcarver, riding a giant bat. Who will win and how many will die? I don't know the circumstances, Victor, so I can't even hazard a guess. Yep, so we could have the giant crystal be there. In fact, so the giant crystal, if we're talking about these big igneous rocks and stuff being pushed out, so this society could have lived by this, by that volcano. The volcano exploded, had kind of a Pompeii that turned into a nuclear winter, causing this glacier. Right, the sky was blotted out, so the sun wasn't as present. Things got cold, and then magic got weird as people tried to survive, or there was something very magical. So this crystal could actually have been something that was found in the glacier, and doesn't even have to necessarily do with the meteor. But of course, that volcano could have ruptured if the continental plate got struck, sent an earthquake or a reverberation, and suddenly we have this Pompeii-style event that happened in the middle of the glacier a long time ago. And so the monastery has its own object of worship, and the frontier town is more. They're more about the starfall. They're more about what created the land. What finger of a god decided to push down and make these mountains. So it could seem kind of culty versus we're just these poor Protestant frontiersmen, and then suddenly we have a weird cult moving through, or Or it could be. I say this in the context of history or of conversation to draw to real life parallels. But when Mormonism was on the rise, many people saw Mormonism as a form of a cult, right? As like a Christian cult. And so as Mormons moved into towns and they were trying to develop and prosper, a lot of people drove them out because yes, they worshipped God and they worshipped Jesus just in a different way, and they had their different methodologies, and it made people uncomfortable enough that they were continued to be driven further and further away until they could finally settle in an out of the way place. And we could be seeing that where the people of the monastery believe that their religion is akin to the frontier religion. It's just different and maybe a little bit more creepy to the frontier people. And who knows what the Whispers even think of this, if they're even aware. Yeah, but everyone believes it's from the crater. I do like that it is from the falling star, though, says Fallon. The cult views it as a part of the glacier, and the glacier birthed it. The frontier town sees it as so it could be something that's contested, and that could also create tension. The dwarf players had a neighboring fortress. Queen went mad, became a mortal being. Players threw their in the sunlight, and she presumably died. One of the players had a premonition, showed otherwise, and now Obak is coming for vengeance. Well, I mean, given enough time and preparation, that could be a very strong key to victory, Victor. Could even be something that was created from the impact, not actually solely from here or there. Could have the Dragonborn being a sort of East India Company influence. Oh. Wait, in that regard, are they the ones then that might have a direct path through the glacier to civilization, even if that civilization doesn't exist? But because they've trained in survival, in magic, and in martial arts, that they're the keepers of these underdark tunnels and the ones who can patrol it, and they're supposedly the ones who can bring goods or services up and down, whether the society is still there or not. That could be interesting. And so they are gatekeepers. They could be. Now that leaves a couple other things though in our so we've taken a chunk of what we're developing and we've pushed it up to the lake, and that could be its whole. We could map out a complex like that. It's a critical, it's a I read critical, but it's a critical. Welcome and hello to you. Thank you for finding us and hanging out with us here. So that is going to leave a massive statue or monument, and that could be just to the founder, right? Look at Springfield. Jebediah Springfield has a statue in the center of the park, as he was the founder of Springfield. It could be something like that, right? There's a notable trait. It could be a monument to. What if these are the survivors? What if, these are the survivors of civilization, and they brought with them a marker. I mean, I say that because I made a Dead Space reference earlier about what's happening. What if they brought a marker, and that is the massive monument, or they recreated one in that case? So that could be something very big in the middle of this area. So let's see. This society would probably be living closer to the water, obviously enough, to handle any sort of seasonal flooding. But if we're talking about a frontier, like a bastion, like a fort or something along those lines, that's probably going to be more over here. Or even, we can break this up a little bit further. There could be a fort and some walls up here. as scouts, or even twin forts here, right? To watch people, to watch for people that might swamp people or whatever that might try to come up the river. Now, in that case, it's probably located a little bit more there. So we have our forts here, and then we have our society, like our town, and I'll just kind of put this in gray. And we can put that here. Ah, if the monastery is carved like a huge dragon's face, maybe that's a statue itself. Fallon, I like it. All right, Victor, do what you got to do. So the monastery is the library. The massive statue is the monastery as well. And we've linked that into the Cabal and the Dragonborn. So now we have this race of half-elves, or again, if they're humans that have mutated due to distant effects of this fallen star, that have set up this frontier town. They may well have... I mean, this could creep up closer if we really want to, but we can, you know, we can have some docks or whatever leading out into the lake. There's not exactly a bunch of shipping, right? Because this isn't like the Great Lakes, that there's all this, you know, they're connected, and this is going between two countries and over a bunch of states. There's really no one else around. So these are docks for fishing vessels. These are ways to get to the monastery and to trade supplies with the Dragonborn that live there. And that would then leave a bunch of farmland. Orange could probably be a good farmland here. Unless we wanted to change the mountain to a dark brown, and then we use like a soil, this light soil brown. But then we'd have our pardon me. Then we'd have our farmland out this way. And we're missing then also the circle of stones and the totem pole. We have assigned some stuff to the monastery, but I would like for there to be, you know, where's this circle of stones? How is this developing? Is the circle of stones on this remote island? And if so, is it, I don't know, do we want this to be a place where, actually, I think we talked about this. This was an old nomad. Oh, yeah. So let's do this, right? If we talked about there's a semi-permanent civilization where the nomads trod through before entering this area and then, you know, succumbing to the changing effects and everything. If they were here, this could be built on, there could be a mound over here. And so let's do this. I'll take an orange color. And let's make a mound. Just to offset it here. And this mound, not only are there some artifacts that could be dug through, you know, one tribe's trash is another frontiersman's treasure. But we could also have these stones. And the stones could be carved in a lot of different ways. I mean, we could have them be diamonds or triangles, you know, so maybe 1, 2, but we should be able to turn that around. Whatever. You get what I'm going for. So I'm going to make little squares for convenience here. And then how do we want this set up, right? If this is a falling star, maybe the stones are actually set over the course of this. Ooh. Idea, everyone. All right, so we have these stones that exist, and they are in, in a circle. We could take that as a prompt. So anyway, what if it's like this? And maybe we have kind of like a longer one out here. Whoops. Ooh, not what I wanted. And then we put a couple little ones here. Okay. So here's an example of a stone pattern we can use. And so the frontier people move in and they say, okay, well, this is a little weird. We have this sort of chain, and then there's a couple other stones. Maybe there's some that have, they're decrepit or whatever. They've collapsed or something along those lines. But here's the general shape. As a dungeon master, perhaps, right, we have a hill. And what kind of a shape is a hill? Not sure if the stream is lagging. Zuler Pie, we don't know what the significance is. That's for us to make up. Am I coming through, everyone? I saw your chat messages. Here, I'll even type it. Am I coming through? Am I frozen? It disconnected. All right. Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, I guess we're going solo. I guess we're going solo. Although, hang on a second. Apparently, my ISP is doing maintenance. So, the broadcast was cut there. Let me see if I can go into the channel on my device as well. If you're watching this later, because it is still recording, ARG. Hi all. Apparently, my ISP is doing maintenance. So the stream is RIP. I guess I'll just keep this up here in front of me. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I guess I'm going to have to conclude this, unfortunately. I'll stay here to chat with you all, and we'll see if it comes back soon. There we go. So yeah, to continue here for the video that is going, a hill, right, is a convex shape, right? It bulges out. What if under the hill, and this maybe hasn't been discovered by the frontiersmen, It's actually a dome, in that the stones here, maybe they have this quartz, that this high count, and they let the light through, and suddenly we have entered into an old a sky map, and this is the shape of the falling star or its coordinates, or it lines up with a particular day. So we can, and so this could be a mystical location. This could be a clue. This could be just something fun to uncover. This could end up being something that could start a peace agreement with the natives, or war. Maybe they find old documents, an old wagon, or some bones or something like that of people, of the nomads who had been before. And so finally we can see what the nomads looked like before they became these kind of reactive amorphous shapes as the whispers. So that could be how the circle of stones takes place. Now for the totem pole, what if the totem pole then, if there are people that if there's whispers that could come up through here, there is a totem pole that is meant to be a visual representation of the people that the whispers could encounter, so that if first contact is made, or something along those lines, it's sort of like the Voyager placard, right? That shows us as human beings and how our solar system works. So what if there's kind of a big introductory totem pole that tells a story visually, in case there's not really contact, or maybe first contact officially hasn't necessarily been made for whatever reason. It could be superstition, it could be fear. What if the whispers can't really leave their homeland because this radiation, this magic changed them, and they would become undone if that happened? Whether that's a rumor they believe because it's a part of their closely held beliefs as a religion or a superstition, or that could just physically be the case. And so to send a message, we have a totem pole. Let's make it kind of big and obvious here. We have a totem pole that forms maybe the cornerstone of the forts in the direction that these visitors would come, as a bit of a welcome. So there we go. A way to communicate. So they're significant, and they tell a story themselves. They're not just a reach out. They're supposed to be a visual representation, because especially if it's observed that the mist people can take on shapes, this might allow them to take on shapes of the locals in order to try and communicate more effectively. And so we have defenses, we have agriculture, we have fresh water, we have trade, we certainly have our disaster, right? Our plague, and the way that this cabal, this sort of kind of necromantic organization, this monastery that is eternally in the frozen snow. I'm here. Sorry. Phone hibernated. Phone hibernated. Okay. So I guess I'm gonna talk with chat on my phone. I think we have a visual representation, right? We have a good idea of where things are. As a DM, we can name the woods, we can name the delta, we can populate it with okra and rice for jambalaya. They can mine the sandstone here, or go to the lake for resources for the fish for umami stuff, the forest for mushrooms or some game or some other local things. And we have a good region that is accenting what we have here. So thank you very much for hanging out as much as we could before my ISP decided to dump the stream. But if you're watching this on YouTube, I guess you got a little bonus content if you didn't see it here first.